Hey, I have a question for you guys. How many of you know how to roll up an extension cord? Seriously, how many of you know how to roll up one of these? Well, I thought I did. For a long time, I had my own way of doing it, and it was the way I knew, so it's what I did, right? Until a couple of summers ago when I was working in the village with some volunteers, and they got into this big debate about what was the best way to roll up an extension cord. Who knew there were so many ways to roll up extension cords, right? Well, they got into this big debate, and so then they took time to show everybody their each individual way of rolling up these extension cords. And I watched them demonstrate their ways, and I was like, you know what? Both of those ways are way better than the way that I've been doing it. So I adapted to their ways and started rolling up extension cords differently. And it's a lot better, way better way to roll up extension cords. And so that's what I've been doing. And now they hang nice and neat, and they're not all tangled up. It's a beautiful thing. But you know what? That's so true for so many things in life. There is so often a better way to do something, but if we don't know that there's a better way, we never do it. And so we just end up finding ourselves stuck in doing it the old way, the lesser way, the not so good way. In life, we all live within a story. We all have a story to tell. We all have a story we've existed in, and we live within that same story until someone introduces us to a different story. And until we're introduced to that different story, we're stuck in what could possibly be a lesser story, a not so good story. Well, when Jesus Christ came, he came with the gospel. He came and brought with him a better story. It's the best story of all, actually. All other stories pale in comparison to the gospel story. Like all other ways of rolling extension cords pale in the comparison to the way I roll my extension cords, right? But if you haven't noticed already, if you haven't been paying attention to the world around us, you know what? Our world could use a different story. It is time. Our world desperately needs a different story. And the only way they're ever going to find a different story, the only way the world's ever going to find a different way is if someone shows them. Someone needs to show the world a better way. Someone needs to show the world a different story, a different way to roll up an extension cord. And church, that is where we come in. That's where we come in. We are here for that purpose. We are here in this place. Every follower of Christ is here for that reason, to show the world a new way, to show the world a better way. That's what Jesus Christ came to do, to show us there's another story. There's a better story than the one you've been living, than the one you've been telling. There's a better way. There's a best way to live life. And so we are here to tell the gospel story. So for the next few weeks, we're going to spend some time exploring the gospel story for ourselves. Because we can't tell a story if we don't know that story ourselves, or if we've forgotten pieces of that story. We're not going to be painting a good picture. We're not going to be telling a full story. So that's what we want to do is we're going to spend some time in this new series called The Gospel Story, getting back to the story so that we can tell the story and introduce the world to this awesome gospel story. Have you ever been sitting with friends reminiscing about the good times that you've had together, and somebody starts to tell a story that maybe you've told a million times and you thought you knew this story? But then when they tell this story, they remind you of a detail, a pretty important one, that maybe you had forgotten. Well, I think that same thing happens with the gospel. We are so sure we know it that we stop really thinking about it. We stop examining it. We stop exploring that story for ourselves. And before long, there are parts of that story that we have forgotten, details that matter greatly. So I really encourage you to join us in person or online over these next few weeks as we set out to explore the gospel story. To hear the story maybe for the first time, to hear it for the 1,000th time, but maybe we'll hear something that we've forgotten. To be renewed by the gospel story's power. To be transformed by God's grace that's at work through the gospel story. My hope is that by the end of June, we will all be living the gospel story and feeling even more confident and empowered and emboldened to go out and to share that story with the world around us. So I hope to see you as we spend some time on Sunday exploring the gospel story.